So it's been a couple of weeks since the last match winning blog, so I've got loads to talk about in this one. I've got a few Fishermania qualifiers, a festival at Weston Pools, and also a couple of open matches. So I'm going to start with the first match, which was at Lakeview around about a fortnight ago now. And I've been to Lakeview only once before, and I know it's quite a difficult venue. I knew we weren't going to be fishing for a massive weight, and going there I expected hard pellets to dominate and just tapping a bit about your peg and being quite patient. So the actual draw put me on peg 13 on reef, and now I didn't know if this was any good or not, to be honest, but I asked a few people and they actually told me that he'd won the match last year, won the qualifier Lucia's, so I had to be reasonably happy. But what they told me is he mugged a lot of the fish, so literally just swinging at an odd carp that was swimming around, and it weren't going to be that sort of day. It was quite cold, it was quite sort of cloudy, that I didn't feel like that was going to be the case. So I expected, like I say, hard pellets to be the main sort of approach. I got told there was quite a few big carp in that lake, not so many F1s. There was a few F1s, but you were mainly fishing for big fish. So obviously in my plan that was going to be the sort of what I was going to look to catch. If I felt like if I could catch 10 carp I could probably win the match, so in my head that was sort of the plan. But as it's turned out, I've really struggled for any bites all day. It's been the theme. If you're not on smack on the fish, you just do not catch anything at the minute. And I've fished hard pellets around my peg, and I've literally caught 12 little stocky F1 things, a couple of little carp, and literally with 5 minutes to go, just as I was thinking about packing up, I seen a ghostie swim past out of me corner of my eye, and I've gone out and mugged the ghostie about £6. So I ended up with, like I say, a dozen little F1s, a couple of small carp, and a decent ghostie about £6, probably about £20, but I didn't bother weighing in, as Simon Skelton next to me had caught quite a few. He'd probably had sort of, I don't know, maybe 8 carp sort of dobbing. He's got a couple of sets of lily pads there on peg 10, and he's dobbed a few fish, I think on bread, in and around the lily pads, and he's caught a few fish feeding down the edge late on. Probably, like I said, I'd probably about a dozen of 15 fish, which have gone £76. He's actually managed to win the match and qualify, so massive well done to Simon. Obviously I've had the winner next to me, but I do not feel like I had a chance that day. I think the fish have just sort of huddled up in that cover in the lilies, and Simon's done really well to catch a few and managed to win the match. Like I say, £76, quite a difficult qualifier, but that's what you expect at Lakeview, and everyone goes there knowing that they don't need to bag up to qualify. So I think that's why it's quite a popular one. And even though obviously the fishing is difficult there, it's a qualifier that I would look to book next year if it was still in. So yeah, well done to Simon. And then on to the next match, which was the day after. I was on the first day, the Weightmaster Festival at Weston. And now the last 2 years I've managed to win the Weightmaster Festival, so I was hoping for another good festival and to have, a chance of winning it again. And Matt and Tom have done the draw on Wednesday night, and they've drew me 2 absolutely terrible pegs, so cheers to that, Matt and Tom. They've drew me peg 20 on Belve on the first day and 20 on Stretton on the second day. So firstly, talking about 20 on Belve. Now on Belvedere there's sort of 2 sets of lily pads on this lake, and they're in peg 18, 9, 25, 2 and 3, and in and around them lilies is where a lot of the fish live. And also from the last festival I knew that there was quite a lot of fish on the end peg 13, so where I was is sort of in the middle of the lake. It's quite narrow. I've had an angler opposite me, Frankie Gionicelli, on peg 8 directly opposite me, and it's quite tight, and I just did not fancy it to do very well. And like on this festival, being the Weightmaster, you have to catch a big weight. It's not about section points, so you've got to try and go for it a bit. And I'm thinking, I just didn't feel like I could catch a big weight there, and I know the peg I was going on the day after wasn't very good either, so it was one of them things in my head. It's like I have to just try and go for it and hopefully try and catch a big weight. So that's what I did. I sort of started off by fishing hard pellets in the edge, but I'm going to try and catch a carp early, feed some hard pellets, and I didn't have a sign there. So I chucked some maggot short, because on the last festival, maggot short in the deepest water was a real good tactic. So in my head I thought if I can sort of nick an odd fish on pellets there, catch a few silvers and hopefully a few fish late on my maggot short line, and then I maybe have a good run of fish down the edge late onto the pallet. But as it's turned out, there was literally no bites to be had at all. I've not had a bite on that metre off the bank line to start with on hard pellets. I've had a go short on maggots, caught a couple of little skimmers, a couple of eyed, nothing much at all. And then sort of randomly, sort of an hour into the match, I've caught an F1, and then I foul looked an F1 and lost it, and then I foul looked another F1 and lost it. And that was really weird. Like, I felt like there was a few fish coming into my peg then. And then after that, I've not had another bite the rest of the day. I've literally had a handful of eyed, a couple of skimmers, and one F1, which have gone £9, which sort of, that's probably the lowest weight I think I've ever caught on Belvedere, and to have it in sort of May time's really surprising, and there's just nothing you can do about it at the minute. I think when you're not on the fish, you just do not catch anything, and the late fish difficult in general. There's a lot of anglers who really struggled. I think I actually managed to beat 2 on the lake with £9, which tells you how bad it fished for Belvedere's usual standards. It's normally brilliant, you catch a load of fish, so quite disappointing, but there's nothing that you can do about it. When you do draw some bad pegs at the minute, you just got to sort of brush it off, try and catch what you can, and go on to the next match. So on the first day, there was quite a few good weights on Stretton. Peg 16 on Stretton won the match. Rob Swan, he had £116, and then I think Johnny Rouse had £102 down the arm, and I think Jack O'Sullivan had £98. So I was going on to Stretton the next day. I was quite hopeful, and when I'd heard some of the weights, I was really sort of thinking, well, I might do all right tomorrow, you know, it sounds like they've had a feed in Stretton. And then as I was pushing my kit back to the peg, I seen Richie O'Connor, who'd been on the peg that I was going on the next day, and I said to him, you caught Rich? And he said, no, I've had £15. And I thought, bloody hell. After the day I'd had the day before, catching £9, I thought, you know, I was going on to a peg which had £15 the day before, but I had to try and stay positive. I spoke to Rob Swan, and he told me he caught all his fish long on the bottom on maggots, so that was going to be the main part of my plan. So on to the second day, and like I say, I was on peg 20 on Stretton, and now, like I say, this ain't a great area to be honest, because it's on a bit of a bend, and peg 22's in, and you're actually facing each other a bit, and I think you end up sharing fish with peg 22, so it's not always great. But I still went to me peg trying to be a bit positive and thinking, you know, I just want to go and get some bites and have a bit of a better day's fishing. I've also had Tom Scully on the peg next to me, so we were going to have a bit of a battle between each other, see who, you know, could come out on top out of the pair of us. So after speaking to Rob the day before, pretty much I was just going to base my approach around fishing maggots long on the pole. I've also fed a bit of corn short, because speaking to a few people, they said that pellets was no good short, and I know Jack O'Sullivan caught a few fish on corn late on, so I decided to feed a bit of corn short, hoping that that'd come good late on. But as it turned out, I've only actually managed one small F1 on it, and I caught the rest of my fish long on maggots. So I've just had a very odd bite on the long pole on maggots, just catting a few maggots and potting a few maggots, fishing either 3 or 4 maggots on the hook, and sitting and waiting for a positive bite off a decent fish. One thing I have done wrong though, to be fair, is I started fishing miles too light. Anyone who knows to fish at Weston, they pull really hard, and every sort of cart you up tries to lock you out. And on the day I actually started on 11 hollow elastic and an 014 diver tournament hook length. And I did actually get snapped by 2 carp quite early, and that was probably sort of £15 of fish lost off the hook. And when obviously it's that difficult, you can't afford to lose them. So I actually got off my box and stepped up to a 13 hollow and an 013 Preston Powerline hook length. And that obviously just allowed me then, when I hooked the carp, to make sure that I was going to land it. So in the end, I ended up with 6 carp and 12 F1s, which has gone £48, which I was reasonably happy with, to be honest. Like I said, it only had £15 the day before that peg, and you know, I was just happy to have had a few more bites. Tom next to me has had £40, so I managed to beat Tom as well. So even though I hadn't had the greatest of festivals, you know, I was just happy that, you know, I caught a few fish on the second day, managed to beat Tom. I had a bit of a laugh with Tom off the next peg. I also had Chris Weeder next to me on my left, so we had a great laugh and we had an enjoyable day. So overall I ended up with a combined weight of 57 pounds, which, like I say, was never going to be any good, but you know, the pegs I've drew just haven't allowed me to have a chance, unfortunately, but that's just the way it goes. Overall in the festival, Rob Swans managed to win it. Like I say, he won the match on day one, and then he had about £60 off peg 36 on the clay pit, and ended up with £175 total, which has managed to win in the festival. So massive well done to Rob. So the day after, I've gone back up to the Oaks Lakes in Sesse for the open match on the new lakes. I really enjoyed it the week before, like I said, when I filmed my live match. So I was hoping to go back and have a nice day's fishing. And Tom's done the draw, and he's drew me peg 1 on ash, which was a corner peg. And I quite fancied it, to be fair. The wind was blowing out, but knowing that, you know, them lakes after the week before, it was absolutely stuffed with fish. So I don't really think it matters, you know, where you draw. You know you're going to get a good day's fishing. So my approach was sort of changed a bit from the week before. Hard pellets had worked a little bit at certain venues through the week, and I thought I'm going to give hard pellets a go short to start with, and then obviously fish meat lot on the long pole like I caught the week before. And then I was sort of indecisive what to do down the edge. It was sort of 3 foot down the edge, so I was either going to throw sort of hard pellets or throw meat down the edge. So I just wanted to see how it started off, and I'd go from there. So like I say, I started on hard pellets short, and had quite a good run, to be honest. I sort of caught 7 or 8 little carp in sort of the first hour. Work wasn't solid, but I had an odd bite, and it was going quite well. And I was just feeding a few grains of meat out long, and I expected when I went out long for it to be absolutely solid. And to be honest, I've not really caught anything. I've just fouled up 2 or 3 carp that were sort of whizzing about off the bottom, never had any proper bites. Caught a couple of tiny little eye, and I thought, what's going on there? Like anyone who's watched the live match the week before will see I caught quite steady on that meat long, and it's just not worked this week. So I decided to change that line to hard pellets as well, and start throwing a few hard pellets in my right hand edge. And as it's turned out, I haven't caught anything on the bottom out long. I feel like the fishing was just too good for that, and the fish were sort of, when you were feeding, they were actually coming up off the bottom and having a bit of a feed. So I have caught a few fish slapping a pellet sheller, loose feeding a few 4mm, and fishing a banded 6mm on the hook, and I've caught quite a few on that. And in the last 2 hours I've caught really well in my right hand edge, just throwing a few 4mm and potting a few 4mm, and again fishing a 6 on the hook. And I ended up with 51 carp, which weighed 153 pounds and come 3rd on the match. So really happy with that. Brilliant day's fishing, and after the last 3 days fishing I'd had, it was just lovely to sit down and get a load of bites. Really like that venue, and I'm looking forward to going back again. I'm definitely going to be going back for a couple more of the open matches down at the Oaks. Brilliant fishery, good turnouts as well. I think there was 57 on the match, so brilliant venue, and I'm looking forward to going back again. The final match I want to talk about was the Fishermania qualifier at Herronbrook, which was on last Wednesday, and I've drew peg 12 on Canal on the stick-ups, which is normally quite a good area, so I was quite happy, to be honest, until I actually seen that every peg was in our area. So obviously, like I say, because it's quite a good area of the lake, they've decided to tighten it up there and leave a little bit more space in the more difficult areas of the lake. So it was sort of pegged peg 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13, so didn't have any space, but I was hoping I was going to get a day's fishing. And as it's turned out though, it's been absolutely dire again, and the only place I've actually been able to get a bite was across to the stick-ups, literally on a little shallow rig poked tight into the stick-ups, and sort of every 20 minutes you'd get a random bite out of nowhere and hook an F1, and I had sort of 9 F1s sort of halfway through the match, and I just felt like I was going nowhere. No one was really catching around me, and again I decided to pack up early. It's just one of them things. Everyone was the same. Everyone was, struggling for a bite. No one was getting any bites. I'd obviously heard that there was a few fish being caught on Meadow and on Bridge, and a few fish caught on Island, and I just felt like we never had a chance. I could also see that peg 8 and 9 in our section was catching a few fish, and they were definitely going to be top 2 in the section, so I just felt like I was never going to have a chance of winning anything. and I decided, like I say, to pack up early and get off home, which again, something I don't like doing. You know, you should really sit and stay on your peg, and you might have caught a few fish late on, but I just wasn't enjoying that sort of way of fishing, and fishing that across and just sitting there waiting for a bite. I couldn't get a bite anywhere where I've actually fed some bait. Like in my edge, I never had a bite where I fed some worms. Threw some meat short and never had a bite, and that's just the way it is at the minute. The fishing is really weird. The fish aren't really reacting to any bait. If you're on a few fish, you tend to catch them, and then if you're not, you just tend to struggle. But that's the way it goes, and I'm sure over the next few weeks it will start to pick up as sort of the fish get, start to spawn, and once that's finished, I'm sure the fishing is going to be great from then on. So fingers crossed anyways. So that concludes another match winning blog. Like I say, I've not had the greatest of times. I did have one nice match at the Oaks though, and as I say, I'm just looking forward to the next few matches. I've got plenty on over the next sort of few weeks, a few more qualifiers, so fingers crossed for a couple of good draws. And if you're out on the bank, tight lines, and I'll see you again for another match winning blog.